Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diverse Goddess. It's Hannah, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about what is a scapegoat in a family system dynamic. So keep watching. So what is a scapegoat? Well, the literal definition is a person or thing that gets blamed for doing something bad that someone else did. For example, a politician might blame an assistant if they get caught lying. But when it comes to family dynamics and family situations, the scapegoat is usually one child who is assigned the role of scapegoat, and they carry the burden of everybody else's dysfunction, and they also carry all of the blame within the family. So they get blamed for everything, basically. And as I've mentioned, I was the scapegoat in my own family. So the child who gets assigned the role of scapegoat, as I mentioned, gets blamed for everything, and they pretty much take the wrath for everything. Even if there are situations that don't even involve them, oftentimes they don't even involve them. For example, a narcissistic parent might have a bad day at work and then come home and take their wrath out on the child and then blame the child as to why they had such a bad day at work, even though the child had nothing to do with whatever went on at work. But the child will still get blamed because they are the scapegoat. And a lot of times a scapegoat will be blamed without a lot of evidence or proof because, again, in a family situation where there is a narcissist and then the scapegoated child, it's just automatic. Something goes missing, something goes wrong, something is off. It's automatically the scapegoat child's fault. And for example, like a hairdryer could go missing or misplaced and the narcissistic parent can't find it. And so automatically it's the scapegoat's fault. And if they speak up and they defend themselves because it really wasn't them or they had nothing to do with it, they will then be blamed for being a liar or a sneak. Oftentimes scapegoats are labeled as sneaky and manipulative. And so basically they will be blamed for just trying to defend themselves. A scapegoat in a family dynamic takes the brunt of everything for everyone in the family. And in order for the family to function, unfortunately, the scapegoat is never supported ever by anyone in the family, including the other parent if there is one, and even their siblings, because no one wants to defend the scapegoat even if they know what's going on. And siblings will not support the scapegoat even if it's one other sibling or more than one other sibling, because maybe in the past they have tried to defend the scapegoat but got punished so bad that they never dare to try to defend the scapegoat again. But in most cases, it's because the narcissistic parent divides the children against each other, and in time, they too will see the scapegoated sibling as the issue. Because usually, that child will be the golden child, and the parent will then praise the golden child, and so the golden child will not see an issue with the parent, but they will see an issue with the scapegoated child only. And I will talk more about golden children in another video. So if the sibling or siblings never come to the scapegoat's defense, wouldn't the other parent come to the scapegoat's defense? And the answer is also no. And the reasons can vary why there is a passive parent. And if it's the narcissistic father with a passive mother, it can be that the mother is scared herself to stand up to the narcissistic father for many reasons. There's a size difference, maybe there's money keeping her in place, or whatever it is. And also, again, there needs to be a scapegoat within the system. And so if you defend the scapegoat, the system loses something. So in some cases, maybe the mother doesn't want to lose appearances, doesn't want to seem like there's issues in the family. And in my case, however, my dad was the passive one and my mom was the narcissistic mother. And there are those dynamics. And the reasons why my father was passive varies, but I also think he was scared of my mother. And that says a lot since he's a man and he's bigger. But again, I will talk about my own journey in separate videos, but we're just talking about scapegoats in general in this video. But there are many reasons why a parent will go passive. But basically, the scapegoat will be isolated. They will be isolated from everyone in the family. And not just within the family, but extended family as well, and even friends or anyone in a community. They will be isolated. And even if they are isolating the scapegoat on the outside or the appearance, of the family will often look like they're so close, or, you know, they look like the picture perfect family, or that they're so loving and everybody gets along. But within the family, it's a very different story. And a lot of times people don't realize this, but even though the scapegoat is the one being isolated and the one being, you know, having to carry all the burden, they are actually the glue that keeps the family together, because without the scapegoat, the family often comes unglued. And they will often have the role of the scapegoat intact, even if the scapegoat is not present. Like, let's say later in life, the scapegoat is able to get away from the family. Even if they are not physically there, the shift will then move to, oh, I can't believe they left the family. Oh, I can't believe that they're so anti-family. And look what they did. They left us all and abandoned us all. And so their role is still there, even if they are not physically there, because the shift will be then on the scapegoat in their action and why they left. So they will be blamed for leaving. And so they always feel like they have to have that role there, with or without you. And nobody in the family is trying to change that either, meaning they need the scapegoat to stay the scapegoat. The scapegoat is actually used to prop up the family and the narcissistic parent. And it's very unfortunate, because the narcissistic parent is always telling these stories over and over and over again. And they're telling these stories over and over again because they are painting the picture of how they want everybody to see the scapegoat as. Even if there's evidence to the contrary, these stories kind of shift the narrative. So if the scapegoat is doing things that are good, or is not horrible, or is not behaving in a way that the narcissistic parent describes, they will say things like, oh, they're just putting on a show, or I guess they're on their best behavior right now, or they're just doing that to be manipulative. They will say a lot of things. And a lot of times the scapegoated child won't even know that these stories are being told. Like for myself, I knew my mom lied. I just didn't know to the extent until later in life. But oftentimes, again, like I said, they're doing this because they want to put up a smokescreen so everybody looks at the child and no one looks at the parent doing whatever they're doing behind closed doors. But basically, no one really does see the scapegoat for who they really are, because they're always listening to the narcissistic parent's stories. And how this can play out, because the narcissistic parent is always saying something negative about the scapegoat, people will, like I said, will see the scapegoat through the lens of how the narcissistic parent portrays them. So even small behaviors, people will start to see as negative that they might have not seen as negative. So let's say a child is quiet, and in most cases, people would just say, oh, that's just maybe a shy child, or they're just quiet. But because of the narcissistic influence, they will then see that child being quiet as being rude or unpolite or stuck up, or withdrawn or antisocial. They will then see it through a negative lens because they were told to see it through a negative lens, instead of just seeing that the child is maybe just quiet. Or in this case, because the scapegoated child does have a lot of things that they're carrying, like the family secret, basically, and they are usually the family secret, the scapegoat themselves, they're quiet because maybe, that is a symptom of being in an abusive environment, is to withdraw. But again, I'll get into all that later. But my point is, they will see something as just a child being quiet, and maybe the child is trying to be polite and only spoke if spoken to type of thing. They will then see it as negative because the parent groomed everybody to see it that way, instead of just seeing it for what it is. The role of the scapegoat is probably one of the most insidious and most painful roles a child can be given within a narcissistic dysfunctional family system. And the reason why I say that, because even though there is a golden child, and even the golden child may have had to pay a price for being the golden child, because sometimes the golden child is beaten into that role or abused into that role, and so eventually they kind of give in and go along with everything, and so then they get labeled as the golden child. So I'm not saying that the golden child or other roles within the family don't take any abuse or any heat. However, with the golden child, for example, there's at least a reward for going along. There is at least a benefit to going along with everything. And that benefit is often being praised, supported, maybe they're bought certain things or given special privileges. But the reason why the scapegoat, I say, is so painful and the most insidious, because with the scapegoat role, there is zero benefit. There is no reward for going along, because they could do everything right for the narcissistic parent, or they could cater to the narcissistic parent, which oftentimes can happen. They become a people pleaser, or they're always trying to please that parent. And even with all of that the scapegoat can do, they are never rewarded. There is zero benefit for the scapegoat. There is no resolve for the scapegoat, unless one day they get up and leave, or they escape. Scapegoat to escape. But anyway, that is one of the reasons why the role of the scapegoat is so insidious and so painful, because there is no resolve. Now, let's say the scapegoat has a lot of talents, or they do really well in school, or they win a lot of awards, or excels in some way. That will never be acknowledged by the narcissist or anyone in the family, because again, even if others in the family want to acknowledge the scapegoat, they won't, out of fear of the narcissistic parent. And the only time a narcissistic parent may acknowledge something that the scapegoat did that was good, or like I said, like an award, is if it's something that's in the public, meaning it's very obvious to everybody that they won this award. And so they're not going to try to come off as the unsupportive parent or the parent that dismisses it, because they're all about appearances. So in the public, they may show that they acknowledge certain things, or in the public, they might show that they are being supportive in certain ways. But again, behind closed doors, it's a very different story. And what can also happen is a narcissistic might say, yeah, they did well in this, or they did well at that, but let me tell you, they're terrible to me at home, or they're nice to everybody else, but to me, they're terrible. Again, that smokescreen, that label of the scapegoat being the bad one. Or they did well, or they won this award, but maybe they did it and they might say, oh, they cheated, or they got it because they are bad. Like I said, cheating or lying or being sneaky. So basically they will shift the narrative away from the child being good back to the child being bad, and reminding you why the child is bad. And the narcissistic parent does this because they're always trying to set themselves up as the hero. And to give you a real picture or a visual of what it's like being a scapegoat growing up with a narcissistic parent, this is a visual. So let's say you're like 3 or 4 years old and you don't know how to swim yet. And you, being the small child, knows you don't know how to swim. So you would never go into water without some sort of supervision, or you just wouldn't go swimming because you don't know how to swim and you don't want to drown. And the narcissistic parent knows that you don't know how to swim. But what might happen, just again to give you an example or a visual, is let's say there's someplace public, or say even at like a friend's house and they have a pool in their backyard. What the parent will do is that they will take an opportunity. Let's say everybody goes inside because they're getting drinks or food. They will see that opportunity, and then they will then throw the child into the pool, knowing that the child can't swim. So the child is then acting, not acting, but, drowning basically. And then let's say everybody then comes out and nobody sees that the parent threw the child into the pool. But when everybody comes out, all they see is the parent jumping into the pool, saving the child. And so everybody looks at the parent as if they are a hero. And that's the story the narcissist will tell. And they will also say that something that they would say is like, I told them not to go in the pool. You know how many times I've told them not to go in the pool? And then that starts the difficult child part. Like, this child never listens to me. They're so disobedient. And thank God I was here to save them, blah, blah, blah. And this is why you need to listen to me, or whatever. Either way, they're seen as the hero, and they get to tell the story of you being the disobedient child, even though they were the ones who threw you in the pool in the first place, just so they could look like the hero. But again, that's very hard to see through, because why would a parent do that? And most parents, most people don't look at parents as doing something like that, because that's very manipulative, right? That's very calculated. And why would a parent do that? Well, when you're a narcissistic parent, you don't think like a normal parent. You only mimic normalcy. You only look to other people as to what a normal family looks like, and you mimic that. But there is a dysfunction or a pathology with narcissistic parents. So they don't think like normal parents, and that's what people need to understand. But this video is not about the narcissist, it's about the scapegoat. But this is just to give you an example of what it feels like to be the scapegoated child. And so in this situation, the child knows that it was thrown into the pool. The child knows that they didn't do this, that they didn't disobey their parent. And they might even speak up and say like, no, I didn't no, I didn't go into the pool against my parents' wishes or whatever. I didn't disobey anything. But then the parent will then say, oh, they just lie, they're just making shit up, and they just don't want to be in trouble. And again, it's very hard to see through for other people because all they saw was the parent saving the child. And that's just to give you an idea of what it feels like to be a scapegoated child. And this doesn't even include physical abuse. This doesn't even include emotional abuse or anything like this. This is just a manipulated situation. And even though, the child might not have been hurt physically because, the parent knew it was going to save and it wasn't really going to drown, it's still very confusing for the child because the child is just like, I didn't do anything, what the hell? But that's what it feels like to be a scapegoated child and to be seen through the eyes of everybody else as if you're crazy when you know very well what happened. And the narcissistic parent knows, but everybody else sees it the way the narcissist wants you to see it. And so they do this for a couple reasons. One, so the scapegoat never has confidence to speak up, or if they do speak up, they want them to feel that nobody will believe them, which is often the case because they've already been discredited. And that is what the narcissist is always trying to do. They're always trying to discredit the scapegoat. And they do this because in this situation with the child being thrown into the pool, if they ever do something, say, more severe than that in the future, and the child tries to speak up about it, guess what? The child has already been discredited. So anything they want to do that's more severe in the future will also be discredited. And so the narcissistic parent knows that. And what they are looking for is for nobody to look at them. They want everybody to see them as a hero and as the loving, supportive parent who just has this difficult child that they just don't know what to do with. And, again, they are the victim. But they do that so, again, nobody looks at them. So when they do something, say, they up the ante and do something even worse than just throwing the child in the pool, the child will just automatically be dismissed and discredited. And it's easy to discredit the scapegoat because, again, it's very hard for people to believe that a parent would set up their own child. And because nobody ever believes children, for example, the parent then has free range to do whatever they want behind closed doors. So again, that's one of the many things that's so insidious for the scapegoat's experience, is that not only are they getting abused, used, and being painted in a certain light, but the other very insidious thing, as I sort of mentioned, but I'm going to try to say it more clearly, is that everybody thinks that they're getting the love, the support, the care, when the reality is the opposite. And that is very insidious, when everybody thinks you're getting something and you're actually not. For the scapegoat, the reality for them, like I said, is very opposite to what people think that they're actually getting. They're basically like an island onto themselves with no understanding of what's really going on from anyone around them. And these type of dynamics go on in families that you may never believe. And just an example, like my family did not grow up rich by any means, but we did have everything that we needed. But I don't want to use myself for an example in this situation. Like I said, I'll do a video series of my own experience as a scapegoat growing up. But why I mentioned this goes on in families you will never believe, because there's a lot of families that these dynamics go on, and to the outside world, they have everything that they need. Maybe they have a beautiful house, they go to the best schools, they have the best clothes, and sometimes, yeah, they can be a very rich family, and everybody thinks that they have everything. But what's going on within the family, in the belly of the family, is something very different. And the reason why I mentioned that it can be very hard to see what's really going on beneath the surface, because for one, like I said, it goes on more than people think within families, and as I mentioned, it can be a spectrum, and I will get into the spectrums as well. But basically, the reason why it's so hard sometimes is because the families that seem the most picture perfect sometimes has the most dysfunction going on behind closed doors. And the reason why it's hard to see that is because people have an idea of what they think an abused child looks like, or they have an idea of what they think a child who has a narcissistic parent would look like. And so when a child doesn't fit that description or doesn't look like that, the same way people have an idea of what a rapist might look like, or what a child who gets kidnapped, or what a kidnapping might look like. They have a certain idea, you know what I'm saying? And so they get shocked when they find out their uncle kidnapped their niece or whatnot, and it was within the family. It wasn't like some boogeyman in the bushes, because that's their idea. Or that's what they think is going on. Or an abused child they think, is going to be acting out all the time, or just on drugs left and right. And even if that is the case, that can be a reaction to abuse, that they go on drugs, or they go on, they skip school or whatever. But most people, when they see those signs, they don't connect it to there's something going on with that child. They just connect to that child's just bad, or that child's delinquent, or, because I know their parent. And so even when they see the signs, they still don't connect the dots. And so these things go on so much because, again, people have an idea in their mind of what that looks like. And when it doesn't add up, or it doesn't align with their own vision of what that would look like, they automatically assume that nothing's really going on. But I'm here to say that people need to drop their ideas of what they think an abused child would look like, or what a child having a narcissistic parent would look like, because there isn't one. And there's a reason why they call it behind closed doors, because nobody knows or sees what goes on behind closed doors. So they only can see what you present. And furthermore, because people need to drop their ideas of what an abused child, or like I said, a child growing up with a narcissistic parent would look like, people need to drop their ideas of what they think they know. Because, for example, a child could be molested or beaten right before they go to school. That happens. That happens a lot more than people think. And the reason why I give that example is because the child could then go to school and act like nothing happened, like they weren't molested that morning, or they didn't just have a beating that morning, or whatever it was, and they act functional. And because they act functional, people think nothing, like I said, nothing is going on, because people have an idea of what an abused child will look like. So people need to drop their ideas. Some of the people within the family may not even know the worst of the worst that happens with the scapegoat. They only know what they've seen or experienced, but they may not have a clue of the worst that has happened with the scapegoat. Because a lot of times, like I said, the scapegoat is isolated, but they're also isolated for abuse purposes. But regardless, the experience for the scapegoat within a narcissistic family system is extremely lonely. Because as I've mentioned, they take all the burden and all the dysfunction from the family. And like I've mentioned, they're like the family trash can. So they get all the trash thrown their way. And they have no choice but to take it. For one, they're a child, but also there's no one there to help them. So they just have to take it. So it's not an easy role to have to play. And in the beginning, they have to take it. Later, we'll get into what can happen to the scapegoat when they grow up, but later they can get away or escape, or leave the family altogether. But either way, the scapegoat is extremely isolating, and it's very painful and lonely. And even though everybody in, like I've mentioned, in the family unit or the family dynamic is being abused by the narc, like I've mentioned, the scapegoat gets the brunt of it. But The other issue is that we do live in a world that rarely believes children when they do speak up. And there are a lot of scapegoated children out there, and they are given no support. Nobody believes them. And so this is an issue within the collective, that when children speak up, people need to believe them, and people need to take them seriously and stop thinking that every parent on this planet is innocent. Because they always say things like, oh, children lie. No, children are pure and honest. Adults lie. Now, when it comes to the community or extended family or extended friends and such, the scapegoated child will be isolated. But like I said, the family will still look like they're very loving and caring, but then they have this one problem child, right? So that's what the scapegoat is then talked about within the community. The scapegoat will be talked about to everybody else, including extended family, friends, whoever, that the family is perfect except for this one child. And they will often be labeled as the problem child or difficult child or disturbed child. And that is another reason why they are the scapegoat, because they are literally the sacrifice of the family, meaning they're the ones who get very little love, support. They're the ones who are misused, abused. They are literally like the family trash can. So they will make the scapegoat feel like the black sheep on purpose. And they will make sure that everyone else sees them as the black sheep, or that they don't fit into the family, or they just don't fit into society, not just the family, but they don't fit, period. Like, again, they are just trash that needs to be taken out with the trash. Like, they are a bad apple, so to speak, or the bad seed, whatever that saying is. And so that is the message that they are always trying to give to the scapegoat. But in truth, the scapegoat is just being used as a cover for everything dysfunctional going on within the family. And they're used as a cover for everything that's going on with them. Because like I said, they are the ones that are most targeted, and they're the ones who are being most abused. And so they need to be so targeted because, again, they need that smoke screen so nobody sees what's really going on. And some people might wonder, well, why do they do it to just one child then? If they're that dysfunctional or have that much pathology, why do they only do it to one child and not to all the children in the family or the other sibling if there's just one other sibling? And the answer is because they only need one person. If you're a sick person, like physically sick, and let's say you have to vomit, do you need more than one toilet to vomit in? No, you just need one, and that one vomit or whatever helps you to feel better. And not only that, but the narcissist pathology is such that they know that if they do it to more than one person in the family, that could go against them. So like I said, they divide their children and the other family members against each other. And so if they're doing the same things to everybody, or sometimes that might be the case because sometimes maybe they are abusing everyone in the family, but they're isolating each individual person, so every single person thinks it's just them and nobody speaks up. But again, it's that divide and conquer. But a lot of times, like I said, they do it to one child because they only need one child. And again, they don't do it to another child because if the other child speaks up, it's stronger in numbers, right? If both children are saying, oh, my parent is doing X, Y, and Z, it's more believable. But if only one child is saying it and not the other child or other people in the family, then it looks like the scapegoat is indeed the issue and maybe making up stuff or lying. That's why they only do it to one child. And the narcissist knows that. Furthermore, the scapegoat is also used to train the other siblings in the family, or sibling if there's just one other child. And how that can play out can vary. But sometimes a parent might literally say, like, don't be like your sister, don't be like your brother because they're bad. So they are training the other children or sibling in the family to see the scapegoat as bad. And again, that's to divide and conquer. But I guess I could use myself as an example. My mom would literally tell my sister, don't be like me, don't listen to her, blah, blah, blah. But when we were really little, she would abuse me in front of my sister. And that was to do two things. It was to train my sister that not only I was bad, and that's why this was happening to me, but it was to train my sister, if she ever dared to speak up, the same thing would happen to her. So the scapegoat child is literally used as a sacrifice and a training tool. But I do want to wrap up this video by saying, when I talk about these dynamics that go on in a narcissistic family system, when I talk about the different roles, like the narcissistic parent, the golden child, or the passive parent, I'm in no way trying to villainize anybody, and I'm not trying to show anybody as good or bad. I'm just trying to show and explain the different roles that are taking place and the dynamics that are taking place, so we can get more understanding. And as I've mentioned, we're going to get into all things scapegoats and the dynamics that go on, not only on a micro level, but on a macro level, because these things go on in the world at large. And the reason why I want to make a point that I'm not trying to villainize anybody or see anybody as good or bad is because, for one, to do that, it doesn't help anybody to heal. And I've been on my healing journey for a long time, and I know this I understand a lot of things because I've done so much healing on myself. And I don't see anybody as good or bad. I don't even see narcissists as bad. And also, every single role has its own pain and has its own baggage. And those are the things that need to be looked at if things are going to get better. To villainize anybody, you just create more division. And so, like, even a pedophile, for example, you have to get to the root of why a pedophile is a pedophile and heal it there. And then therefore, when you heal it at its core, the pedophilia would dissipate on its own, just as a natural byproduct. But if you villainize and you just call somebody bad, that does not fix anything. How do I explain it? It's like if somebody goes to the doctor and they have a cold and they're sneezing and coughing, you don't treat the cough or you don't treat the sneeze. You treat what's causing the cough, or you treat what's causing the sneeze. And they are not bad because they have a cough or a sneeze. So you have to heal why they even have that symptom in the first place. So all of these roles are just symptoms of a very sick dynamic taking place. And so that's how I see it. I don't see things as good or bad, or I don't villainize anybody. Like, even like someone who's a pedophile or someone who's a killer, those are symptoms. Just like people have physical symptoms when they're sick, people have emotional symptoms when they are emotionally sick and have pathologies. And so you don't just villainize somebody because they have a pathology, or you don't villainize somebody because they have a cough or a sneeze or cancer. When they have a physical sickness, you don't villainize them. You just try to cure the cancer, or you try to cure the sickness. The same thing with emotional sickness. And things like pedophilia, narcissistic abuse, all of these things are emotional symptoms of something very sick going on. Anyway, I hope I made that clear, that made sense, because I'm not here to villainize anybody. And also, on a personal level, I know what it feels like to be a scapegoated child and what it is to be seen as bad and horrible and villainized. And so therefore, I have a lot of compassion. And in my healing as well, I've come to a place of a lot of compassion. And so anyway, I don't want to rant here, but I just want to make that clear. When I do my videos to come, I am never putting anybody in a bad box or a good box, or this person is evil and this person is a saint at all. Everybody needs to heal, period. But anyway, I hope today's video gave a little insight and even a perspective of what it feels like to be a scapegoat within a narcissistic family dynamic. And on that note, I'm going to end today's video. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!